Welcome back to Ferris Sports Update. Time to talk Bulldog women's basketball, and joining us on the show, head coach Kurt Westendorp. Coach, thanks for being here.
Glad to be back.
Home opener. How'd that feel just to play in Wink Arena?
It was nice to be back in Wink. We've had, it feels like a long preseason, having, 3 scrimmages, exhibitions, and playing in a tip-off classic out in Erie, PA. So having those 6 chances to play, it's nice to have it count for real in front of our home fans, to be comfortable and really put up a lot of points. It kind of looked like a team that, was really happy to be in their home confines.
Talk about being able to play in such a great start to the season in a tip-off classic against some of the best teams in the entire country.
Well, we knew coming into the year we were returning 6 seniors, a lot of upperclassmen with a lot of experience, so we knew that we could challenge ourselves with our schedule, and really the NCAA does reward you for playing a tough schedule. That's kind of looking down the road to March when you're looking at the strength of schedule metrics, but we played a bunch of tough teams early, knowing that we were going to have the experience that we have, and also knowing that we have quite a bit of talent, in that experience. So those 3 games out east in PA, those were 3 of the best teams in the country. 2 of them were ranked number 2 and number 4. And then Drury was picked to win the GLVC, which is a regional conference for us. So we knew going into it we were going to have our work cut out for us, and I'm really happy to be where we're at right now.
Even in the next couple of weeks, the competition doesn't get any worse. Still a lot of good teams on tap. And you mentioned that the NCAA takes that into consideration, but for your group, being battle-tested early will help you come postseason time.
Absolutely. The GLIAC is looking stronger than ever. I think we have 5 teams that played in a tip-off classic. Wayne State's going to be one of the better teams in our league, and they were picked 5th in our league, and they just knocked off Ashland, who was ranked in the top 10 nationally. So we have a lot of teams in our league that are going to be really tough games as we go throughout January and February leading into March, and we know we got to be ready for those battles on a consistent basis.
Take a look at the highlights from Sunday's game against Drury, and obviously, as you mentioned, they're a good team. They were coming in here to try to make a statement, but really got to be proud of the way your players battled and set the tone early.
Yeah, we got off to a really nice hot start. I felt like the energy that we played with early, and that kind of goes to, you're playing at home. We got those 3 games under our belt. Playing with a lot of confidence, knowing what our identity is, that we can go out there and execute it confidently. And Drury's got a lot of people that can put the ball in the basket. They did a good job of handling our pressure. They were able to score the ball against our pressure some. It was going to be a high-scoring game when you have players as capable as they have. And there's a reason they were picked to win their conference. There's a lot of talent up and down their roster. But we were able to make the game the way that we wanted the game to be. And like I said, offensively, we just kept hitting our stride, kept hitting our rhythm, whether it was transition or in the half court. You'd see Maya knocking down a 3. Even after made shots, we want to get out and go. An excellent job there by Emma. That's just an effort 2 points for us. And when we can get a lot of those effort 2 points, in the transition game and then execute well, like Caden did right here, reading that screen, we're going to put a lot of points on the board.
Transition, such a huge part of the way you want to play, but also hitting some big threes early on gives your team a lot more confidence to maybe play that up-pace style.
Yeah, we want to be attacking the paint, every opportunity you get. And when you're shooting the ball well from 3, that's usually because you're doing a good job of attacking the paint, making the defense kind of constrict. You're able to kick it out, and not every 3-point shot is created equal. There's bad threes and there's good threes, and I feel like we took a lot of good threes in this game, and usually that's reflected in the percentages.
Halftime, you're up 50-38. What's the message to the team after a strong offensive performance to start the game?
Yeah, we had some really good runs where I felt like we had a chance to extend it even more in the first half, but we didn't finish the half as strong as we wanted to, which is why coming out to start the second half, we knew we wanted to go on the first run. We didn't want that to go from 12 down to like 6 and then feel like, okay, you're in a nip and tuck ball game. And I feel like we went on the first run, maybe even the second or third runs as well. Because by the time we got to the 4th quarter, up 22 here going to the 4th, you feel like you're in pretty good control at that point. Still a lot of basketball to be played, but the other team's going to have to be pretty exceptional to come back. But we're not gonna take our foot off the gas. We kept pushing our tempo, kept pushing our transition game, trying to wear the other teams down as much as we can wear them down, so they don't get through the screens as well as they usually get through the screens. We're on the offensive end, they might not be knocking down shots quite at the same clip as they did early in the game. But you can see there, Drury's just got so many good players that they were going to keep scoring the ball. So it was nice that we were able to be consistent with it as well.
Big offensive performance. You mentioned the transition, some toughness plays, hustle plays, but the rebounding margin was something you specifically mentioned in the postgame. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, rebounding, it's a little bit of physicality, but it's a lot about just wanting to go get the basketball. And the way that we want to play, we're crashing the offensive glass probably harder than most teams do. because we're not as worried about transition game going the other way. We're trying to set up our pressure, so we're going to crash the offensive glass really hard. And then sometimes because we have such a good transition offensive game, teams don't really want to crash the offensive glass against us because they're too worried about getting back on defense. So that's really going to help us to have the possession battle be in our favor. So even on those nights that we might not shoot it as well, we're in a real good spot to still win those games.
We saw multiple highlights from Caden Blanchard. I mean, a player that's meant so much to this team through her career, and great to see her back and healthy for this season.
Yeah, it's awesome to have her back out on the court. She's been through a lot in her career here. In year number 6, she's torn both ACLs. She's not a kid that complains about it. She's one of the hardest workers that you'll ever find out there. So it's great that she's getting these opportunities to really show what she can do when she's healthy. It's nice to have that kind of calming factor out there, having someone who's been through as much as she's been through. But it's not just her. It's nice to also have Maya Hiram in there, being a fifth-year senior, to go along with our 4-player traditional senior class. There's a lot of people out there that you can look to for composure that have been through a lot of the situations that we're going to face throughout the year.
When you look at your lineup this season, top to bottom, your roster, where do you think the strength of this group is?
Really, I think it relies kind of in the depth that we have. I feel like we're able to go a lot deeper into the roster than we have in years past, and that's allowed us to be able to play the way that we're trying to play right now. So I don't know if it's going to be as breakneck throughout the entire year. There's always some of those games that end up being a little more nip and tuck. But having the depth, I feel like it's allowing our players to really develop. There's not a lot of players that are sitting the bench and not getting opportunities. I think our player development this year is going to be really key for us because we have so many people that can keep improving as the year goes. But having that depth and having that experience, it's all going to lend itself to hopefully a really good brand of basketball that can be consistent, and we don't have to be as reliant on just one player to carry us the entire way.
The senior leadership on this team, the players with experience, the depth comes in, though, from some of those young players. Who have you seen that's really impressed you through the preseason and then through these first couple weeks?
Yeah, I could rattle off probably almost every name, but the one I'll single out, we kind of saw her in the highlights right there. Grace Lyons is doing an excellent job, in her sophomore season. She did a lot of learning last year, coming off the bench in pretty limited minutes, but near the end of the year, she started to get more and more and play with more and more confidence. I feel like right now she's playing with a ton of confidence as she gets in there. I feel like players that hadn't seen the court as much last year, we're seeing our redshirt freshman, Mara Mitchell, is getting in there, getting a little bit more run. And you're just seeing growth as well in some of the players that aren't our starters but are seniors. You're seeing Emma Skierbeck really play well. You're seeing Allie Schultz come in and do an excellent job of shooting the basketball, doing whatever role we need her to defensively. And she's been a player that just gives us consistent energy. So you can really look up and down the roster at, everyone that's either new to our team or players that were on our team last year. I think everybody's taken a step forward. And that's what great programs need to keep doing.
Well, Coach, thanks for the time, and we hope that you can continue taking those steps forward throughout your season as you push towards the GLIAC schedule.
All right, looking forward to it. Thank you.
That'll do it for this week's episode of Ferris Sports Update. Thanks so much for tuning in. As a reminder, you can follow all the action online at ferrisstatebulldogs.com. Have a great week.